I saw Plan 9 from Outer Space last week at a small theater in the village that was running it as a curiosity. Not as a serious film, as a curiosity. The audience was there to laugh at it. I laughed too. I want to be honest, parts of it are extremely funny, in the specific way of something that has failed at what it attempted, in ways that are more interesting than the failure of most things. I also want to be honest about something else. Ed Wood made this film. He made it with his own money. Money he raised from a Baptist congregation who wanted a series of religious films and who eventually got this. He cast his friends. He shot it in a few days. He used a paper plate as a flying saucer. He replaced Bela Lugosi, who died during production, with his wife's chiropractor, who held a cape over his face for his entire performance. He believed in the film, not cynically, not as a commercial exercise. He believed in it, and this is the specific thing that worst film ever made cannot account for. Before I describe Plan 9 specifically, I want to think about what we mean when we say a film is bad. The standard criteria: technical incompetence. The cinematography, the editing, the sound, the visual effects are below acceptable professional standards. Narrative incoherence. The story does not make sense. Characters behave in ways that contradict their established characteristics. Events occur without causal logic. Performance failure. The actors are not able to convincingly embody the characters they are playing. By these standards, Plan 9 from Outer Space fails comprehensively. The cinematography. Inconsistent, poorly lit in places, with visible continuity errors that suggest the footage was assembled without regard to whether it matched. The narrative. A group of aliens decides to implement Plan 9, the reanimation of the recently dead, in order to prevent humanity from developing a bomb that could destroy the universe. The logic of why this would prevent the bomb's development? Not explained. The performances. Variable. Some earnest, some unintentionally funny. The chiropractor standing in for Lugosi, holding the cape. The specific performance of someone who was not told to act and did not try to act, and whose presence on screen is therefore entirely authentic in a way that acting would not have been. Technical incompetence? Yes. Narrative incoherence? Yes. Performance failure? Yes. Worst film ever made? Not yet convinced. Edward Davis Wood, Jr. Born October 10, 1924, in Poughkeepsie, New York. He wanted to make movies. Not as a business proposition, not as a career strategy. He wanted to make movies the way some people want to sing or paint or write. The specific compulsion of someone who has a form they need to work in, and who will work in it regardless of whether the world wants what they produce. He directed Glen or Glenda in 1953, a film about cross-dressing, partly autobiographical. Wood wore women's clothes throughout his life, that Bela Lugosi agreed to appear in. The film was meant to be a cheap exploitation picture about the Christine Jorgensen story. It became something else. A film that is genuinely personal, genuinely invested in its subject, and genuinely incompetent at the technical level. He directed Bride of the Monster in 1955, also with Lugosi, also personal, also incompetent. He directed Plan 9 from Outer Space in 1957, after Lugosi's death, using Lugosi footage from another project and a stand-in. He kept making films. Not because the films were successful, they were not, because he had to. Bela Lugosi. He played Dracula in 1931 and became one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. He was the specific face of a specific kind of horror, the elegant, European, slightly theatrical horror that the Universal monster films required. He was typecast. He could not escape the type. The parts that could have let him escape, not offered. The parts that were offered, variations on Dracula. By the 1950s, mostly unemployable in mainstream Hollywood. He was working with Ed Wood because Ed Wood was the person who wanted him. He died in 1956, before Plan 9 was completed. The specific tragedy? Lugosi spent his career being used by an industry that did not value him as anything other than what he was useful for. And he was discarded when the usefulness ended. And he died being grateful to Ed Wood for wanting him. Ed Wood, one of the worst directors in Hollywood history. Also, one of the few people who still wanted Bela Lugosi. The gratitude was real. The specific irony? The man with the worst technical skills in Hollywood was also the man with the genuine human warmth toward a performer whom the skilled people had discarded. The flying saucers in Plan 9 from outer space are paper plates. They are visibly paper plates. They are hung on strings. The strings are sometimes visible. The plates wobble. This is the specific technical failure that is most often cited as evidence of the film's badness. I want to think about it differently. Ed Wood had no money. He needed flying saucers. He used what was available. The paper plates? Not a failure of vision, a failure of resources. The vision, flying saucers, alien invasion, the reanimation of the dead, humanity's place in the universe. This vision is not small. This vision is, in its ambition, entirely appropriate to science fiction. The resources? Paper plates. The gap between the vision and the resources, where the comedy lives. But I want to be precise about what is funny. The funny thing is not Ed Wood's vision. The funny thing is not his belief in what he was doing. The funny thing is the paper plate. Not the ambition, the paper plate. And laughing at the paper plate is not the same as laughing at the man. The film opens with Criswell, a television psychic, delivering a monologue directly to the camera. Can you prove it didn't happen? The specific quality of the opening. It establishes the film's relationship to the audience as one of genuine sincerity. Criswell is not winking. He is not performing camp. He is telling you that what you are about to see is the truth. He believes this. Or he performs believing it. The distinction? Unclear. Criswell was a television personality who made predictions, none of which came true, and who maintained a public persona of solemn sincerity about predictions that were frequently absurd. The opening of Plan 9? This sincerity. The specific quality of the sincerity. It is not ironic. It is the sincerity of someone who has decided that sincerity is the correct approach, regardless of whether the material warrants it. This sincerity, either the film's greatest failure or its greatest achievement, depending on how you read it. The failure reading. The film does not know it is bad. The achievement reading. The film knows what it wants to be and commits to it without reservation. The plot of Plan 9 from outer space, aliens, alarmed that humans are developing a devastating bomb, decide to implement their 9th plan for dealing with humans. The 9th plan? Resurrect the recently dead, which will apparently prevent the bomb's development. The logic? Not present. The aliens resurrect 3 dead people in California. The military investigates. The aliens explain their concerns. There is a fight on a flying saucer. The saucer crashes. The resurrected dead return to death. The film ends. What the film is actually about, underneath the plot, it is about humans who are so concerned with their own power, with their own capacity for destruction, that they are ignoring the larger context in which their actions exist. The aliens, frustrated by humanity's self-destruction. The military, refusing to hear the aliens' warnings. The civilians, caught in the middle. This is, underneath the paper plates and the visible strings and the chiropractor with the cape, a genuine concern about the nuclear age, a genuine anxiety about what humanity was doing with the power it had developed. 1957, the hydrogen bomb, the Cold War, the specific terror of mutual assured destruction. Ed Wood, in his incompetent way, was making a film about this. I want to make a distinction that I think is important. There are films that are bad because they were made cynically, the product of people who did not care what they were making, who were producing something to make money, who had no investment in the work beyond its commercial potential. These films, the specific badness of indifference. Plan 9 from Outer Space. Not this. Ed Wood was not indifferent. He was passionate. He believed in what he was making. He raised money from a Baptist congregation to make it. He used Lugosi footage that did not match the new footage because Lugosi meant something to him, and he wanted Lugosi in the film. The specific badness of Plan 9, the badness of insufficient skill applied to genuine vision. This is a different thing. Insufficient skill applied to genuine vision, the condition of almost every artist who has ever made anything at the beginning of their development. The difference between Ed Wood and a young filmmaker who later develops the skill. Wood never developed the skill. The vision was always present. The skill was never present. This produces a specific kind of failure that is different from the failure of indifference. The failure of passion. I want to address the specific relationship that modern audiences have with bad films. The watching of bad films specifically because they are bad. The specific pleasure of watching and mocking. This culture, not yet fully developed in 1957 when I am watching this film, but developing. The specific question, is it fair to watch a film made in sincerity as a source of mockery? I have been thinking about this since I saw the film. The audience at the Village Theater was laughing. I was laughing. We were laughing at the paper plates, at the inconsistencies, at the chiropractor with the cape. We were laughing at Ed Wood's sincerity. I do not think this is entirely wrong. A film, once released, exists in a relationship with its audience that the filmmaker does not entirely control. If the audience finds comedy in a film that was not intended as comedy, the comedy is real. The finding of comedy, legitimate. But I want to hold alongside this that the comedy is at the expense of someone's genuine effort. The genuine effort, also real. Both can be true. You can laugh at the paper plates. You can also acknowledge that the man with the paper plates was doing something real. I said at the beginning that Ed Wood was not wrong about everything he believed. Let me be specific about what he was right about. He was right that science fiction could address serious concerns about humanity's place in the universe and about the specific dangers of nuclear development. He was right that Bela Lugosi still had something to offer. He was right that films could be made outside the studio system, with small budgets, by people who were not connected to the professional Hollywood establishment. He was right that genre films, horror, science fiction, were a legitimate form of storytelling that deserved the same creative investment as prestige films. These convictions? Not wrong. The execution? Wrong. The convictions were real and were shared by filmmakers who had the technical skill to execute them. Filmmakers who were, in the 1950s and 1960s, beginning to make the kind of independent, genre-engaged films that Wood wanted to make, but could not. Wood was not wrong about what he wanted to do. He was unable to do it. The unable to, a failure of craft, not of vision. Plan 9 from Outer Space has been seen by more people than most of the films I have described in this series. Not because it is good, because it is famous for being bad. The specific achievement? It has remained in the cultural conversation long after many technically superior films have been forgotten. This is not nothing. Not every film that is remembered for the right reasons. Plan 9 is remembered for being a spectacularly entertaining failure. The entertainment? Real. People watch it and enjoy it. The failure? Also real. But the entertainment produced by a film, the genuine pleasure of an audience, is not nothing. Even if the pleasure is different from what the filmmaker intended. Wood wanted to frighten and to make people think about nuclear war. He made people laugh. The laughter? Genuine. The people who watched Plan 9 and laughed? Genuinely entertained. This is more than many technically superior films achieve. I want to return to the designation worst film ever made. The designation requires a definition of worst. Technical failure. There are films more technically incompetent than Plan 9 that nobody has seen and nobody has remembered. Technical failure alone does not make a film the worst. If it did, the worst films would be films that no one has watched because they were too technically incompetent to hold attention. Plan 9 holds attention, not through technical achievement, through the specific comedy of its failure. But it holds attention. Commercial failure. Plan 9 was not commercially successful on its initial release, but it has generated revenue over the decades through repertory screenings and home video. Artistic failure. Here we approach something. Plan 9 fails to achieve what it attempts. The scares do not scare. The argument about nuclear war does not land because the film does not function as a vehicle for the argument. But the artistic failure of trying to do something real and failing is different from the artistic failure of trying to do nothing and succeeding. Worst film ever made. Too simple. Most technically incompetent film that people keep watching. More accurate. Most lovable failure in Hollywood history. Also accurate. I went to see Plan 9 alone, unlike the Village Theater audience. I saw it at a screening where other people were there to laugh. I laughed with them, but I also watched Ed Wood's credits and thought about what I have been describing in this series, about the people who made films in Hollywood, the specific conditions, the specific courage required, the specific ways that talent and resources and timing align or do not align. Ed Wood had the desire. He had the courage. He did not have the skill. In a different life, with different teachers, with different resources, with different luck. Who knows? The desire and the courage, real. The skill, absent. The combination? Plan 9 from outer space. I felt, watching it, the specific, complicated mixture of amusement and something more like sadness that comes from watching genuine passion produce something that cannot do what the passion intended. The passion, visible in every frame. The failure, also visible in every frame. Both real. The Baptist congregation. Ed Wood approached a Baptist minister in California with a proposal. Make a series of religious films, beginning with a film about the resurrection of the dead. The minister was interested. The congregation provided money. Wood used the money to make Plan 9 from outer space. The resurrection of the dead, present in the film, in the form of aliens reanimating corpses. This is not exactly what the Baptists had in mind. Whether Wood was lying to the Baptists or genuinely believed that a zombie science fiction film satisfied his commitment to religious filmmaking, I cannot say. The specific quality of Ed Wood that makes this story characteristic rather than monstrous, you cannot fully determine where his sincerity ends and his delusion begins. He may have believed that Plan 9 was a religious film. He believed genuinely in what he was making, whether this was the wisdom of someone who saw connections others missed, or the delusion of someone who could not accurately assess his own work. Unclear. Perhaps both. No, This is the one film in this series about which I will say plainly, no. But not the worst film ever made, for the reasons I have described. Something in between. A film that is genuinely bad at what it attempts, and genuinely entertaining at what it accidentally produces. A film made by someone who believed in it, and who should not have believed as completely as he did, but whose belief is itself interesting. A film that has survived when better films have been forgotten. A film that is, in its specific way, honest. Not skillfully honest, sincerely honest. The sincerity, its only unambiguous virtue. Plan 9 from Outer Space is the film that teaches you, through paper plates and a chiropractor with a cape, and a Baptist congregation's money, and a dead man's stand-in, and genuine passion applied without sufficient skill, that the gap between vision and execution can be so large that it becomes its own form of expression, and that calling a film the worst ever made requires a definition of worst that accounts for a man who was trying, completely and without irony, to say something true about a universe he believed was full of dangers we were not taking seriously. He was not wrong about the dangers. He was wrong about the paper plates. These are different kinds of wrong. Come back next week. Creature from the Black Lagoon. 1954, 3D. A monster from the deep. And what the Black Lagoon tells us about what Americans were afraid of in 1954. Come back.